I am Arthur McKenzie. I was born on the 28th of August 1919. I lived in Liverpool and with a family of man and wife and 4 brothers and 3 sisters.
My dad was one of 8. There were 5 boys and 3 girls, and as I recall, only 3 bedrooms. And his bedroom, he had to share the bed with his brothers, and he was the youngest. So you can imagine that story about there were 10 in the bed. Yeah.
When Dad was 14, he had to leave school. Even though he was clever enough, he could have gone to grammar school, but there just wasn't enough money like his older brothers were able to go. And so he had to get a job. And of course, those days, you didn't just keep your pay packet. He would maybe get a little bit of pocket money back, but the wages were help for the family to live.
I could see 1938, war was coming. I couldn't deny it. And I thought, well, why don't you join what you want to join, not wait till you're drafted in. I joined the Air Force and was sent to the Far East. When I got to Singapore, it was quiet. It was a peace time, wonderful. But it didn't stay very long. When Singapore was attacked by Japanese forces, they decided to get as many people out of Singapore as they could. But the first ship we went, I got aboard, was a mine layer. This was Friday the 13th of February 1942. And the ship, all of a sudden, it was a shh in sound. We had run aground on a sandbank. But anyway, they signalled to any little boat they could find to take us. And we got aboard another boat, which is called the Yin Ping. It was a Chinese river dog out of leave. 52 ships that left Singapore. 48 were either shelled, sunk, or captured. So it was extremely dangerous. And the danger part was the Bangka Straits. It was a channel that ran between Sumatra and Bangka Island. And it was now Sunday evening. You could see it, and in the distance there were 3 vessels approaching. But these 3 ships shone a searchlight on us. And then shortly afterwards, the searchlight came on again, followed by a loud noise. They began shelling us. The first shell went over the ship. The second one, it hit the starboard side, where most of the men were watching the vessel. I'm afraid it just wiped the lot out. Then the third ship set us on fire. And then the fourth went below the decks, and that was it. The ship was sinking.
When he was on the boat, on the Yin Ping, shortly before it was shelled, I remember him saying that he was standing by the railing at one side and he felt suddenly that it was unsafe to be there, and he moved around to the other side of the boat. And where he had been standing is where the shell hit, and certainly he would have been killed if that had been the case.
to be in that moment, in that situation on this tiny little tug and experiencing gunfire from above, and then experiencing a cruiser and a destroyer sending fire at you. It must have been pretty terrifying for it to be hit so many times, and then obviously them being in the water.
It was Sunday night, 15th of February, 1942, when the ship was going down. I heard someone, while they were in the water, shout, "Oh, don't go away, keep together, mates." But he sounded as if he was nervous. So I shouted back, "Keep talking and I'll swim over to you." I swam over to him and I found out he was the cook of the ship. He said, "Oh, we'll swim together."
Dad was swimming in the water for quite a considerable amount of time with his mate, the cook. And I've just got a bit of a passage. It's from his book. It says, "It's all right, chum, don't worry. Just put your faith in God and everything will be all right." "Do you think so?" he asked. "I am sure it will," I answered. So we prayed aloud in the ocean, asking God to save us and give us strength to carry on.
Eventually, the light began to, the day began to dawn. And we had been swimming in the right area, in the right position, because we were approaching what we could see, an island, a big hill, and a plain that followed it. Now the distance was, we were about 5 miles off the shore. Oh, we'll be there for lunch. We kept swimming and swimming and swimming. As we were swimming, he decided to swim against the tide. I said, "Where you going? You're going away from me." He said, "There's a current running. I'm getting away. I'm swimming across it." I said, "Well, I'm too tired to swim across it. I can't." He said, "Oh, well, I'll send you a boat." I said, "Good. If I get there first, I'll send you one." So he parted from me. So all the next night, I was swimming alone. And then I noticed this child's lifebelt come down. And I stripped under my chin. Well, that was wonderful. Someone must have been praying for me there. I didn't know who until I got home. My mother said to me, "Were you ever in quicksand?" Because I had a horrible dream one night and I was swimming to you and trying to grab you before you went under. But you go away from me. I said, "No, I was in the waters." Then later on, there was some other thing bobbing up and down on the water. Now it was a mattress that somebody had thrown. But have you ever got onto a blow-up mattress in a swimming pool? You'll know what it's like, because once you get your leg over, you'll go over too, and you're underneath it. Oh, it's ridiculous. I'm using all my energy and all my strength to get on it, and I can't. So I tried to fold the mattress in the water to make a U shape and get onto the U shape. I tried that several times before I succeeded. Then I found I was doing a new stroke I'd never tried before. I was swimming breaststroke with my hands, and my legs were doing a doggy paddle. It'll be used for the Olympics. Night came again. I'd had 2 nights and 2 days in the water. But I thought, oh, surely, not that it was like that. I was tired, my hands were tired, my legs were tired. I thought, oh Lord, please, not another night. I prayed like that. And I'd hardly got the word out of my mouth when I felt my legs going backwards and I went forward. I had landed on Banker Island.
Who can contemplate 48 hours in the water?
And the fact that he survived floating with a cork life jacket, which really would start sinking because of the water being absorbed, and the fact that he found a floating mattress and was able to, after several attempts, straddle it. The fact that he was under the blazing sun, being sunburned, his eyes all shrivelling up and his tongue swollen because of the fact that he was so thirsty. And he even chewed on a piece of wood, hoping that that would give him a bit of moisture, but all that did was hurt his mouth. And then he found an onion, a rotten onion, and managed to peel bits away and get a little wedge that he could get some moisture from to just give him a little bit of respite from it.
Being in the water all that time, I find it really hard to comprehend the impact of that. Not letting go of life itself, his faith that must have carried him through.
Seeing Banker Island, and instead of getting to the shore, he's been constantly battling with the outgoing tide, and he ends up circumnavigating a part of the island and not being able to get in. It's just like that dangling carrot that you just can't reach. And eventually, obviously, after 48 hours or so, 2 days, 2 nights, he reaches the shore, and how exhausted would you be?
Japanese had captured the island on the time it was sunk. And there was some part of the island which was far more dangerous than others. It was a miracle where I had landed. It was apart from where they had the troops.
When he came ashore, actually some Chinese guys saw him and helped him because he couldn't stand up. And they took him to a hut. They gave him a pair of cotton trousers and a shirt. And he was just so weak in that he was able to stay overnight. They gave him a little bit of food and drink, but obviously he couldn't take much.
They let me stay in a room that night, but I could not sleep. I was still swimming in my sleep. Oh.
And it was soon after that, a few days after that, that he was trying to get to some medical attention, because up until then there was nothing. And the only part of him that didn't need medical attention was a little part on his cheek, and the rest of him, his legs were bad, he had a shrapnel wound in his back, his left arm didn't work properly, and I mean his face was a mess, his scalp was all crusted, and he really, and deaf in his left ear because of the shelling. So he was really in a bad way. And when he did finally get to medical attention, they were under Japanese occupation, and he was then a prisoner.
He was put in a temporary place and then into the camp at Muntok. That was only for a short time, a few weeks I think, before he was taken up the Musai River to Palembang. And he was there for, I'm not sure, but again I think it was only a period of weeks before it was decided that they would be taken to Japan. And in the interim they were moved to Changi in Singapore, and then on to Taiwan, where they were working in a stone quarry loading railway wagons with stones, and then on to Japan. So it would have been a period of months before he finally reached Japan, and there he was working in a shipyard in Yokohama, doing various tasks there for most of the war, and just in the last few months he was moved up to Sendai. It would have been 3.5 years from the moment he was captured until he was liberated at the end of the war. and then he was in and out of hospital for the best part of a year following that. I think he was like 6.5 stone at the end of the war. Yeah.
This man had a heart after God. God looks at the heart, he says, and he saw this was a faithful, honest man, and because of that, he wanted to keep him alive, and that eventually brings me into the picture. I was only 15. And his sister brings the picture home of his brother Arthur, who had been made a prisoner of war. And we put it on the mantelpiece above the fireplace. And that night we had a really bad air raid, and the photo frame fell in the earth and smashed. I stole that picture. Don't ask me why I was doing this. Nobody was about. The next morning I picked up the picture, looked all around, ran down to my bedroom and shoved it under my pillow. If Mother makes the bed, she'll find it. Mum, I'm 15 now, I shall make the bed every morning. She won't find it then. Now, why would anybody want to do such things? It took me a long time to find out that I was the one God was using to keep him alive in the prison camp. I'd never met him. I'd never known of him. I had to look after this photograph and tell it every night. It's going to be back to normal when you come back, because it'll be all over and it'll be nice again. Good night, and I'd shove it back. I did it for 4 years before I met him. Worked that one out. This is the original picture. I picked him off the floor in the hearth and kept it. Everyone thought it had gone in the fire, and I wasn't going to tell them I had it. He'd come to Alice's house at Christmas, where I saw him for the first time. The 1st of January 47, I saw Arthur standing by the fireplace. And we sort of nodded to each other. I knew who he was because I'd seen him for so long. Alice said, I don't want to go to the pictures. Hey Arthur, why don't you take Edna to the pictures? And he said, well, I'm game, but I can't do it today. What about Saturday? I said, yes. And when I got there that night, I dressed myself up, you know. Oh, I even had a feather up at the side of my hat. So we went to the pictures. Anyway, walking home, he said, will you come to church with me tomorrow? I said, oh, yes, please. I always wanted someone to go to church with. And we went and spent every night in my parents' house talking. And those were the days when you kissed hello and you kissed goodbye, but that was it. So there was no messing about. It was just hello and goodbye. Well, this went on for the 4 weeks of January. And on February the 1st, he said to me that night, hey Edna, have you ever thought, why do everybody choose to get married a different day? They never keep to the one day for marriages. I said, I don't know anything about that. All I know is what I want. He said, that's what we'll do. We'll get engaged in March and married in June. And we'd only known each other 4 weeks. And that has now lasted 72 years. that's the way he is. He loves his Lord, and he loves his wife, and he loves his children.
It's lovely to see how much after all this time they still love each other and sit in church holding hands. In fact, they'd probably fall asleep holding hands. But
And for all of what he's been through and the calibre of the man that he is as a result of that, and with his faith in God, I'm in awe of him. And for me, he'll always be my hero.
Both of them have given me a godly heritage, and all of us kids. And it's just wonderful to see it going from one generation to the next to the next. And it's wonderful to see my own kids walking with the Lord, willing to serve him in whatever way.
Dad is a small man in stature, but he's a very big man, and he's got incredibly big shoes to fill. We, his kids, are his legacy, his grandkids, his great-grandkids. I'm so proud to be a son, and if I can be half the man that he is, it'll be awesome.
If God can do that for two silly kids like we were, he can do it for anyone if you give him the opportunity.
Everybody has troubles at times. Put them away. Just look on the bright side.
I love you, darling. See, he takes no notice when I say that. He just knows it's good.
Dad loved his food, absolutely loved his food, and again, because of starvation and everything, it's so understandable why. He enjoyed everything. He had a bit of a sweet tooth, I think he still probably does. But the fact that he was able to put up with Mum's cooking for so long is, I struggled with it. Sorry, Mum. Am I even allowed to say that? But yes, sorry, Mum. Yeah, that's pretty amazing.